Hi, everybody, and welcome to my Twitter channel, YouTube channel, Facebook channel for another school leader interview. This is now episode 3 of series 2 of my school leader interviews. And I'm delighted on this occasion to be joined by Tom Hague, who is the principal of CastleMead Academy, somewhere I myself have actually worked at last year. And I'm going to be talking to Tom about not only school leadership, but also leadership in general, as well as touching on his journey to become principal at CastleMead, and also digging a little bit deeper into education in the UK as well at the moment, particularly with COVID and everybody going back. We will talk about the context of the school as well a little bit later on in the interview. Tom, welcome to my amazing school leader interviews. I'm sure you are utterly excited about this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Tom. A little bit disappointed you didn't start with hi, boss, or something. That's what you normally say, but let you off all the same. No, looking forward to it. Yeah, looking forward to it very much so. Thanks for having me.
I do. Yeah. What's the first thing? So these are just the silly quick fire questions at the beginning.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the first thing that you grab in the morning?
At the moment, probably our 2-year-old son. He doesn't sleep with us or anything like that. No, he's not in our room at the moment. He's got his own room, but his room is at the front of the house. His blinds aren't very good, and therefore he wakes up at about 5-6 o'clock every morning before the alarm. So well, I say we. My wife will admit it's me. I go and grab him in the mornings. So he gets us out. So there you go. First thing I grab in the morning. Got with the little boy.
Biggest inspiration in life?
I think personally it's got to be family related in terms of parents wise, obviously right up there. Spoke about that to different people before in terms of, I think our parents, fair to say, live their lives through me and my brother and my sister in terms of wanting to give us lots of opportunities that perhaps they didn't have. I'm very lucky in that way. And then it changes, I think, for myself, as you kind of move through life as well, in terms of before kids and after kids. After kids, you know, that kind of, it's all about them. We've got 2 boys, my stepson Amari, who's 9, Isaac's 2. And we live through them. I think professionally, got to be the team at school. Great bunch of people, inspire me every day in terms of what they do, what they go about, and I think particularly the senior team that work around me as well. Seeing them grow, seeing the way in which they've gone about growing over the course of the last year makes me want to obviously continue to do the same. So yeah, plenty of inspiration around, put it that way.
What do you think it is that people notice about you?
I got asked that on my headship interview, actually. Got asked that by
this is more important than that. This is more important.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Got asked it by people on a tour. It's one of those where they try and catch you off guard with a question. And I said then that it's probably that I'm going a little bit grey. If you can see that. I've got the wrong side. There you go. Get a little bit grey on the sides. But I feel quite fortunate. Apparently, it's your mother's. Someone told me it's your mother's father that you follow after. And apparently, he was like jet, like as white as snow at 21. So I'm holding firm. But yeah, something. I don't know if it's changed since marriage or headship, but yeah, it's certainly going downhill fast. We got to grab it. You know, keep it while I can. Yeah.
And what do you hope people notice about you?
Just that someone that hopefully can talk the talk and kind of walk the walk as well. I always say it's very easy. I think many teachers, leaders, head teachers are good speakers. You know, we do recruitment events, so it's very easy to stand up and explain about your school at 5-6 o'clock in the evening when no one can see it. I like to think that people see that I don't ask other people to do things that I don't do myself. and see that I'm the one that we're out there. We do SLT, do gate duty in the morning. I'm part of that. We're back to school already. Had training days yesterday, today. Absolutely right that if I start the day and yesterday was about teaching and learning, then too right that I need to be part of those sessions going forward as well. So hopefully back up what otherwise can be a lot of hot air. I like to think they see that.
I've got to give you some credit now, because you're really like big yourself up. But at the end of my time at CastleMead, there was a trip for pretty much the whole school, or most of the school. I think 30, 40 students were remaining in school. And to be fair to you, you were there on duty with those 40 or 50 kids for the whole day.
Thing is though, like if Nick, who leads on behaviour, if she was to hear you say that, she would completely disagree, because she would say, it's probably not. She had to take 200 kids ice skating, and I was the one that stayed back at school looking after the 40 that didn't go. So not the best example.
All I'm
really.
saying is, I think there's some leaders who aren't necessarily hands-on, and that's all I'm saying. And I'm saying that I have seen you, if you like, on the front line, taking a responsibility, which is what you were alluding to there with
that.
With that. What's your biggest weakness then? Mental flaw.
A bit of a perfectionist. I think getting better at it. I think so. I guess we'll talk about CastleMead in a bit, but obviously I've been the founding principal of that school. Started that school from the beginning with the help of a lot of other people, and therefore I've got a set way in my mind of how that school needs to operate. And I think therefore in probably the early days in particular, as much as I want to give people the autonomy to lead, I was probably quite a lot over the details of that, and that's obviously not sustainable. And got better at that, it's fair to say, but you can't. You've got to have a feel for everything. I read someone said the other day about it's fine to want to, be in control of the details, and details matter. That's of course important, but you can't be a perfectionist and hold on to every single part of it. And had to learn that quite quickly in headship and before in terms of leadership as well.
Makes sense. And your biggest strength?
I think I always say that I'm quite self-aware. I think you have to be quite emotionally intelligent to do this job as a head teacher. I think to do it, I've only been in teaching 10 years. It's kind of 10 years this year since I trained to teach, and therefore to lead people who are more experienced than you, and to lead people who are, let's not make any bones about it, older than you. As well, I think you have to be quite self-aware. Self-aware in terms of not getting too far ahead of yourself when things are going well, and not kind of getting too down about it when things are not quite going the way you want them to be, and trying to keep that middle line as much as possible. But then emotionally intelligent enough to be able to realise that it's people you're dealing with. We talk at CastleMead about the fact that we're people first, and kind of professionals and learners second, and I think that is something that I like to think I do well as well.
Do you think, because obviously you won't mind me saying your age, I'm sure, but being 32, do you think that coming up through the ranks, if you like, quite quickly through there and becoming principal head teacher, what have been the challenges in that? Because I'm not being funny, but people often talk about imposter syndrome, particularly new leaders, new teachers, people. So how do you deal with what other people think, if you like? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that pressure of what other people might think?
I think there's a few parts to your question, but the last bit you asked is really easy in my mind to answer in terms of how do you deal with what other people think, because you can't, in this role, you can't worry about what everyone thinks, because you're going to have conflicting opinions and you're not going to please everyone. The decisions you make, you've got to do by your moral compass and all the facts considered and different people's perspectives, make the decision you want. Then ultimately, in terms of what people think, it comes down to being concerned with the people that you respect and the people you trust, what they would think. And for me, that's family, like we said, and particularly my senior team. And I know that they know that there's times where I've got to make decisions that might please one of them over another, because they might have obviously conflicting opinions, but I like to think that they've got that about it. What was the first part of your question? What were you saying?
I suppose that the fact of and this could come across from any dimension. I've mentioned age, but it could be any particular dimension where somebody might say, question someone's experience or validity or whatever, and it's how you might deal with that, and it's how you deal with that in yourself, or whether you've experienced that. It might be that you haven't experienced that everybody's just been, and it's been fine to rise up that leadership scale.
I think the age thing's interesting because I think, to start with, I think I've been a senior leader for about 6-7 years or something like that, and I think maybe 6 years. And I think that to start with, I thought it was more of a thing, and therefore I would almost try and overcompensate for it, and I would almost be proactive about getting out there in front of it in terms of presuming that it would be an issue, when in actual fact I don't think it was, to my face, because to put a bit of a spin on it, at school today we've had a focus on curriculum day today, and we obviously come to talk about choices, and we talk about the idea that it's ideas over identity. And I think as any leader, the credibility comes from the ideas, I'd like to think, rather than the identity, in terms of age or whatever else that might be, as well. So I think I was very conscious of it, and it was, I don't think it was ever really a thing, because I think people that have got enough about them, and that's, we obviously work in a really intelligent profession, people that have got enough about them are hopefully going to respect what someone says, rather than necessarily the person that's saying.
100%. And what's the one personality trait that you simply don't have time for?
Probably some similar kind of link to that. Just arrogance, really. I suppose to flip it on its head, the personality trait I really admire are people that are really humble. The people that, if you think in teaching, that do the things when no one's watching, because I think it's the duty of a really strong leader to notice the things that often go unnoticed, and I think that's really important. So the people that just do a good job and as best they can when no one's watching, day in, day out, and be really humble about it, that's what I admire. Too right, definitely.
I love that. And what is your preference? Comfortable silences or non-stop conversation?
I'll go comfortable silences, because sometimes at work, 100 miles an hour, when it's like working in schools, there's non-stop conversation. Get home, we always try and sit around at dinner. Got a 9-year-old, it's non-stop conversation. So sometimes just a nice comfortable silence at the end of the day is not a bad thing. Don't mind that too much.
And last question on this little beginning section: what is better, being nice or being fair?
Being fair. I'm sure people would say being fair. I think that what people want to see in a leader, I think, is that we treat people equally, but more so than that. If the teacher next door to you is not pulling their weight, and you're doing the thing day in, day out, and they're the one letting the side down, it's fair to both of those teachers that the leader picks up on that and does something about it. But what I would say is a little caveat, sit on the fence a little bit, is there is a bit of a myth in leadership that you can't be nice. Of course you can be nice. You know, I like to think that people think I'm nice as well, and that I've got time for people. And you know, you need to. I've worked with people that will talk to support staff not as well as they might talk to teachers. I mean, what's that about? You know, it's not good enough, is it? So there's definitely a place to be nice as well.
Spot on. So moving on to teaching and leadership, very quickly, the context of CastleMead, because it is quite a unique context. Do you want to talk about that just for a minute in terms of what the context is? Yeah,
sure. So if I get my years right, May 2018, interviewed to be founding principal of CastleMead Academy, a new free school being set up in City Leicester for 11 to 16-year-olds, but starting out with just year 7 in the first instance, drawing children from all over the city of Leicester, and wanting to ensure that we meet the needs of high proportion disadvantaged children as part of that as well. Had a year, therefore, to come out of school and to have effectively an office job and to have many different jobs where I had to think about what that school was going to stand for, to recruit 240 families to a school that didn't exist, that they'd never heard of, that had no buildings, no staff, just me, Rita, the executive principal, and a couple of pull-up banners. We used to go out on the road and try and canvass, you know, people to come to this school. Recruited all the staff, obviously well, and then last September 2019, opened our doors and admitted our first founding cohort, 240 children. We're in temporary accommodation at the moment. It's really good. I've grown to love it. But therefore, our main school building will be ready next September. So we're here last year, this year, and therefore, obviously, a huge opportunity to try and affect the educational landscape of what is on offer for their children, but also in terms of the city, and obviously trying to do things the right way. So I just thought we buffered there a little bit, but yeah. So there you go. That's CastleMead, yeah.
Brilliant. Hopefully the signal hold up. As we mentioned before, there's like all hell breaking loose outside, which is probably something to do with it. Yeah. What was your worst and best day as head teacher? As a head teacher, what's been your best and worst day?
Yeah, so just clarify that as well. I've only done it for a year.
Yeah,
and really that was 2 terms that were open. So, what's that? Sorry.
I think it's a good question because it's only been a year.
Yeah, sure. So worst day. I think I presume this is the case for any head teacher. But when you start out trying to build a reputation as a school, those first early encounters are probably going to set the standards going forward. So I think I used to grimace a little bit every time a child made a wrong decision, and you think, oh, why have you done that? You know, because like, you know, is that going to be the place to go? But I think now we've started to form enough of a reputation, and we've got a second group of staff who have joined us and come to our team now. I'll tell you what, I think the worst day was the day before we opened. So we're in temporary accommodation. The school has been flung up. It arrived on the back of a lorry and flung up over the course of a couple of months. And obviously the parents had never seen the school. And we were able to become oversubscribed the first year somehow. We had 240 families that were going to turn up for the first day, and they'd never seen where they were going to send their children to school. I just thought that was wrong. I thought we can't have that. So I decided the day before we opened in the afternoon, we were going to invite all the families to school. And I was really strong in my thinking, they have to come and see where they're going to send their 11-year-old the next day. But the school wasn't quite ready. So 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I've got parents turning up wanting to look around the school, and I've got builders on the stairs. I remember talking to one parent, and I know who he is. I picture who he is. And we were in the going into B block, as you know, by the stairs. And he asked me a question, or he's complimenting the school. And all of a sudden, this drill goes off behind, like rattling on the stairs. And I had to step outside. But then better still than that, that's all still going on. There's like builders everywhere and all sorts. And then it got to about 6 o'clock in the evening, and we the children have to come in the back gate. They've got a separate entrance just for themselves. But we had a burst water pipe or something like that. Something wrong with the water. So at 6 o'clock in the evening, the night before we opened, there was a massive trench just in our gate where the children have to walk in. I got to that point, and I had a project manager who's brilliant. I got to that point where I just thought, you know what, we'll make it work. We'll put some cones around it. We'll get these kids to walk around this trench on their first day. So that was a pretty bad day. But you learn to roll with the punches. Luckily, the angels, we say we've got a CastleMead angel. She smiled down on us, and we were able to somehow miraculously, they came and did the job at like 6 o'clock the next morning. The kids were able to walk in the gate. But yeah, that was a bad day. Best day. You just get nuggets occasionally. I remember Remembrance Day, Armistice Day for a long time. We obviously opened the school end of August. It went really well, really pleased, had to keep evaluating, shaping things. But to get them together on November the 11th, so it's quite quick, a couple of months in. And we got like stairwells, and I was stood up looking down on the kids. And for them to stand for 2 minutes, brilliantly in silence, looking so smart in their uniform. That was just a bit of a moment to look back, and yeah, obviously really proud, and plenty of moments that have gone like that. But yeah, there you go. Both of those days stick in the mind.
Perfect. Where do you think new leaders go wrong? What's the mistake that and maybe there might be mistakes that you've made, but where do you think new leaders go wrong?
Yeah. So the one that springs to mind from my perspective is about rushing. So I remember when I became an assistant head, I was a little bit in awe of the head teacher at the time, to be honest. And first, he did like one-to-ones, which I do now in my team, where every week, senior leader would have a sit-down one-to-one with the principal. And I remember the first one, and I'd obviously like prepared this meeting a lot, thinking, one of the things I was leading was pupil premium, thinking, right, I've got to tell him what I'm going to do. Got to put my plan across. And I remember saying, right, I think we should do this, this, and this. And he basically really credibly said, okay, let's think about it. And we almost weighed it up for about 3 or 4 months as to what we were going to do, so that when we did it, it was right. I thought that was, at the time, didn't really get it, because it's all about impact, isn't it? And these words get bandied around, but actually, I think taking your time. You hear from really experienced head teachers when they take over a turnaround school about listening, and I fully take that on board. It's a bit different from CastleMead, my perspective, because it opened on August the 29th, where I was last year. I can't really sit back and listen, because everyone's looking to me to say what we're meant to do next. But sometimes, just taking your time. And I think leaders sometimes just rush in. And then have to unpick. You rather kind of start tight and loosen up.
I have to say that's something I've done as a middle leader, is like just like trying to bulldoze everything. It's like what I do with my businesses and stuff that I do now. I just bulldoze. I just want to get stuff done, but then it is good to reflect, isn't it, and plan a bit more and try and be patient. I'm just impatient. When I have an idea, I just want to get it done.
Yeah, and I think that's okay in there. Like people talk about burning platforms, and rightly, our kids haven't got time to wait. To wait something like that in terms of pupil premium strategy. School 50% pupil premium. They can't. These kids can't wait 3 years for you to get your strategy together. Don't get me wrong, because then they've left. Too late for them. But at the same time, being considered is really important. And doing that right helps with the bit you asked earlier about imposter syndrome, and people thinking that you're credible. Not rushing in. And I think, therefore, on the flip side, mistake leaders make are probably just rushing in sometimes. Yeah,
I mean, some of these questions we've already touched on, but
okay.
What what does success as a school leader look like for you?
Yeah, I think few ways I'd say is that our pupils, we refer to them as scholars. So our scholars, for them to go beyond CastleMead and just kind of be the adults that we want them to be in the future. And that's quite hard to put on a KPI or something, you know, in terms of like a measure. I can't really give you a percentage on that. That's really what it's about. That's what we talk to our staff about, and that's what they sign up to. It's about them being young adults that we admire in the future, and we talk about roots and wings, giving them really strong roots, so they're really well grounded in really strong values, but giving them obviously the everything that they need to be able to fly as well. I think it's about the people in the school in terms of the staff as well. Previous head teacher, who you can tell I've got obviously a lot of admiration for. When I got into headship, I wrote a really nice letter and said that I was the, I don't know what it is, 7th person of a senior team to go on to headship. I mean, what a brilliant way to measure the success of a head teacher, but not just headship, but in terms of leaders. So we had new staff induction day back in July, and like my only address to these people is obviously going to be that, you know, we're going to support and challenge you. It's a bit strange on their first day to say that I kind of want you to go on to bigger and better things beyond CastleMead, but that's what it's about, isn't it? Like that's a judge of success. If people, hopefully, there's some kind of quote around it, isn't there? About, you know, you treat people well enough so they want to stay. But really, yeah, I want them to go on to bigger and better things. That's a success as well, I think. And yeah, and we're early stages of that. We'll see where that goes. Thankfully, no one's left yet, but we'll time. But you left, Tom. So, yeah.
I did. It's end of contract, so there we go. So I was going to mention, I've taught at CastleMead myself, and you've got very, very set routines for the students. And in a lot of the schools I've visited, whether it be through, and I've worked in, through school leader interviews, through different things. Thinking of Sam Strickland's school, the Dustin school, thinking of Michaela and different ones. Can you describe your routine, some of your routines that you think might be unique, maybe, or that you think are worth flagging up, and the thinking behind those routines? So what the thinking is behind them?
So the thinking's really, the thinking is that children are in school to learn. And therefore, everything is about maximizing learning time. That's really straightforward. You know, their parents send them off in the morning, and they want them to get a really good education. That's one thing I think it's fair to say most parents could agree on with school, as much as we have really supportive parents. And so that's the thinking behind it. You mentioned those other schools, right? We of course, we learn from all these other schools out there. I mean, that's the beauty of education at the moment, or one of the beauties. And when we first started, I was a little bit concerned, didn't want to copy these other schools, because you want to be your own school. But at the same time, I soon came to realize that is at the disadvantage of our scholars, our kids, if we do that. So we copy. And why do we do it? It's just all around consistency. We talk about purpose, not power. We're not doing it because we like children necessarily to be silent all the time. But there's a real purpose to the fact that we talk about silence is golden. So routine-wise, we have hand up in the morning. So we don't have a bell in the morning. All the children will be on the playground. Senior leader will raise their hand. All the staff on the playground, they'll raise their hand as well. All the children will follow. We're quite near a big busy road. You'll hear the traffic in the background, and then someone will just say, right, let's lead off to line up. They line up in the morning. Tutor comes to meet them, brings them into class. We work really hard in terms of what we call threshold, which won't be novel, in terms of when we don't do a silent corridor, and at the moment. Maybe it's something we'll put on the table again. So I don't want to do that necessarily, and that suits us. But when you get to that threshold, you have to say good morning to the teacher, good afternoon to the teacher, have to enter in silence. You enter that threshold, you're there to learn. Enter in silence, stand behind the chair, they sit, they do now most of that lesson in silence. You know, we've got no issue with children working in silence. So that's a big part of it. We have raised hands as I described in the morning, but that's consistent throughout the whole day. Teacher, you've taught that, Tom, you need to get class quiet. We've all been there, had to raise your voice above the loudest voice. Otherwise, you just put your hand up, and the scholars replicate, and we don't have to thank them off the back of that, because that's just what we do. And why do we do all those things? Yeah, maximise learning time, but also I think that children and adults, but children really reap the benefits from consistency, and it's that consistency that they strive. You know, they come through the gate in the morning at CastleMead. Got to be there by 8:25. Don't leave till 3 in the afternoon. We've got they know what they're going to get, and we narrate that to them all the time. They understand the why. If they don't like it to start with, they might not even like it in the end, but at least they can say that we're really transparent. And yeah, there's different things we do about that. We've got our third training day tomorrow. Third of 5. We're lucky in Leicester. Leicester made a really smart decision. We've got 5 training days in many schools, which will run in Leicester. And we're going to spend the whole of tomorrow and into Thursday on behaviour. The teaching and learning Monday, curriculum today. As much as we say curriculum's never finished and it's forever, we tried to give a day to it. And then behaviour, we do deliberate practice with our teachers. You've seen that, Tom. Teachers will practice this as you'd expect them to do in other professions. And we got, out of the 5 days we've got a day and a half on behaviour. I just think that it's so obvious, isn't it? But all the other stuff you do, if you've not got those routines in place, if you've not got, and there's no one routine you've got to do, you can't teach without people knowing what's expected of them, and children having that kindness in terms of respect across the school. So yeah, you can't underestimate that. Huge emphasis at CastleMead and what we're all about, definitely.
And again, I have to say that's true from work. People might question what's going on. I've been there, so that is true. What you've been able to generate in terms of behaviour, the routines, the systems, the structures. You know, after working there, that's visible every day. I have to say, you know, and I'm sure you'll want to mention them anyway, is the team around you is like, if you're ahead and you've come into a school, behaviour is not very good, or it's a starter school, right? And you don't have the kind of caliber of people that you've got in your senior leadership team and in your staff. Because obviously I've worked, I know you work with, you know, Michaela and Chloe and all people. Is it possible to do that without those people? What do you do if you're that head teacher? How can you do it on your own?
Yeah, I mean, this is where you say imposter syndrome. This is where a 32-year-old that's done been 2 terms in the job, people might take offence by saying this, because I haven't been there and done that. But I think that
you have worked. Your previous school was quite a challenging school.
Sure. People talk about buy-in. I think that's a really overused term in every sphere. Not a huge fan of that. So I think it's necessarily about buy-in. I think you've got to be really clear in your expectations and be really clear in that from a pupil perspective, from a teacher perspective, from a parent perspective. And we script a lot of this stuff in terms of what we expect. And the downside to this is that it can sound like it's very forced when it's really not. But we have what we call CMA Wage Day, So from 8:25 in the morning to 3:40, every aspect of that day, we've got the expectation of what should be happening. So that's really transparent. We have what we call consistency scripts. They're getting shared tomorrow with staff in terms of, we're not going to pick people up necessarily if you don't use the exact right phraseology. So it's not robotic in that way, but in terms of what would you do in this situation? What we expect, staff to be picking up their own tab on different things. And then we have micro scripts in terms of how that all happens in lesson as well. And we do like rollout scripts with the children as well, in terms of like, this is what's happening next and why. So I think there's a lot of hard work.
I'll cut in there. Do you think, obviously this idea of scripts has got some flack, in the teaching community.
Yeah.
For reasons around autonomy and teacher kind of, I say credibility, that's probably the wrong word.
I hear you. Yeah.
Teacher autonomy, individual teacher autonomy, individual teacher professionalism, and kind of saying, we're giving you a script, we're telling you to do this, and this. So even though I hear you, you're saying we're not going to pick up. Do you understand that criticism? And what would your response to that criticism be? How would you combat that?
Yeah, of course I do. Because I said earlier, I think I don't know if I said, but one of the things I think in education at the moment, why it's an exciting time to be in education, if you forget all the guidance nonsense and that, it is about the fact that it's, I think, becoming a bit more credibility in terms of profession, in terms of being an art form, and performance, etc. I think that's important. So therefore, I understand the argument, because you could say that we're reducing that. But I think it's about training, and I think it's about consistency. We've done 5 training days. How often in school really do you actually train your staff? Like our staff, I think it's fair to say, have been trained in best practice, and everything's research informed, and we don't make things up on a whim. So I think it's there. It just makes it so clear, and it makes it safe. And if it does 2 things, if it makes it safe for everyone involved, because everyone knows what to expect, and all the behaviour stuff makes it a really safe school where everyone can flourish, and it allows teachers to teach, then I just don't think that can be a bad thing. And when I say we don't pick up, so if we see something we think could be better, then we talk about feedback as a gift. We go and coach that person. We have a conversation about it, but it needs to be high challenge, low threat. That's what we're all about as well. And so it's not that we don't pick up on it. It's more that you don't have to stick to the letter of the script word for word. But in terms of a new member of staff turning up at our school, in terms of a whole team coming together last year when we had 3 days and they didn't know each other's names, let alone never been in the building, etc., etc. And then we got school opening. There has to be a kind of a go-to in terms of.
I find it quite comforting to have something like that in place. I'm into year 14 or whatever, and I still find that a positive thing to have some scripting or some routines and some systems. So as an NQT, I would have loved it, to be honest. That's me personally. I think you touched on maybe the other angle of it might be the accountability side, is not having, not saying like you mentioned checking up or whatever. I don't know what phrase you used, but how you marry that, and how you make sure that that's done in the best way or the right way is possibly a difficult thing. I don't know. What you on that one?
Yeah, but I think that's what our whole school is set up in terms of coaching culture. We talk about Chloe, who lives on Teaching and Learning, quote that's all over everything, is about the teachers from Dylan William. And I can't remember exactly, but in terms of teachers don't need to prove because they're not good, but because they can be even better. And that's what we're all about.
I think you
and therefore that
you'll have to repeat that quote, Tom, because you cut out as you
I
were the Dylan William quote. Unfortunately, you cut out.
Stumbled over it first time anyway. So just that teachers should improve, just not because they're not very good, but because they could be even better. You know, we've got some really expert teachers, but I think they've all grown. I think they've all learned to better their practice, and they will continue to do. As we said, curriculum's not forever. You know, curriculum is forever. Well, that was clever. That was careful there. Curriculum's forever. Teaching is forever, isn't it? And developing as well.
Yeah. Penultimate question.
Okay.
You mentioned your two kids earlier. Now, something that's come up quite a lot in terms of head teachers being parents, basically, right? And being family orientated whilst being in a leadership role in a school. How do you find that? And does because I know your partner is also a teacher, so does that help or hinder the job you're doing? The first thing on the teacher partner thing, I probably edudate is why I'm bringing this up. But does a teacher partner help or hinder? And how do you cope with being family orientated and being a head teacher?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, you just cope, don't you? You just cope. So every parent out there, you know, before you have a kid, tells you about sleepless nights. And if I said to you, Tom, because I know you've not got kids yet, but if I said to you that, you know, you've got to wake up 4 times tonight, you'd be like, what? I won't survive. I won't survive the next day. But you do. You just cope. So yeah, going through first year of headship, start up a new school, and getting up 3 or 4 times a night as well. Like that's tough. But just get on with it. But you just got to prioritize it as best you can. Isaac, our son, his favorite program is Paddington Bear. There's an episode, right, in Paddington Bear where Mr. Brown, who's the family, I don't know, you probably don't know Paddington Bear. Mr. Brown, he it's a really windy day, and his Paddington and son wants to go and fly the kite, and Mr. Brown says, I've got a stack of papers. I can't go and fly the kite today. I'm really sorry. I've got loads of work calls. And obviously later on, the papers go everywhere. And he says, tell you what, I've got it wrong. It's a really windy day. We need to go and fly that kite. And I think Mr. Brown, therefore, gives me a little bit of perspective occasionally in terms of you can't turn around to them and say, sorry, Daddy's got to work. Even though you do. Of course you do that, but you feel you get it wrong and you've got to keep you in check. So yeah, you just find time. We work it between my wife and I. My wife's a teacher. I'll pick up from nursery by 6 o'clock. She'll get back to my stepson goes to after school club, and she'll get him, and then we'll come back here, and then so leave work at 5:30 or so, get the kids sorted, get them to bed, have dinner, and then we start again at 8 o'clock. And that's just what we do. And that's no great hardship. Loads of people have it way harder than that, don't get me wrong. So that's what we do. In terms of my wife's a teacher, she's an English teacher. I think it's good. I think it's good in 2 ways. One is that she gets it. She understands what it's about. You know, do we talk about school a lot? Yeah, but we like being at school, so that's fine. And the other is actually it probably keeps me grounded quite well, because as a head teacher, she does work in my school in terms of initiative, well-being, marking. Take marking, for example. I see how much she has to mark and understand that. And she worked in really good schools, don't get me wrong. But that keeps me grounded as a head teacher, knowing that when we make a change as a team, it's going to affect people that have got families and got kids, and it affects their life. So that probably just keeps check a little bit as well. But yeah, fair play to her, because she probably gets me at my worst. She always tells me, like, Tom, you're such, you're so good at school, and I come and take it out on her. So yeah, fair play to her as well. But yeah.
Last question: masks or no masks?
Yeah. What time to ask? I think probably maybe in the last 45 minutes we might have had an update. Really? I just think, who knows? Yeah, I don't know. I just think that everything's about keeping children as safe as possible. I'm, talk about domain specific leadership. I'm not an expert in terms of the medical bits of that. But what I would say is that in our trust, we've decided to allow teachers to wear masks if they want to. We've done that anyway, if it supports their confidence. And we had a conversation amongst the secondary heads in our trust, should we allow the pupils to? And so we were quite firm in their thinking that we should. And in the end, we decided to come back to the guidance because the guidance is our friend. But then there you go. But you're asking my personal opinion. I just think that if the guidance comes out and says they should be worn by staff, by students, if that's in times such as in Scotland in the corridors, etc., then that's great if it can be shown that it keeps the children safer. My concern is obviously that we've got 480 sevens and eights coming back next week that are going to be more keen to put their hand up to their face, to pull someone else's mask, and the guidance, if it comes out, has to be really clear on what's expected of schools with not too many grey areas, because and maybe that's wishful thinking, but in terms of, do children have to, if they're going to move down the corridor, do they have to bring 5 masks for that day? Like, how's it going to work? There's a lot of questions up in the air. So just all for anything that keeps us safe. Does wearing the mask keep us safer? I'm not the expert in that. And therefore, I just think it's not as straightforward as just rolling that out. And I think that I genuinely do see both sides of the argument in terms of we're going to have to educate, just like we would in terms of scripts, those contentious scripts, have to educate the kids about, how to do that properly as well.
Yeah. Tom, thanks so much. Love talking to you. Always do. I think everybody who's watched this interview will see, and I can testify that you are one of the most down-to-earth leaders I've probably worked with in my career. And you do see, you get what you see. You are very straight, and everyone can see that. And also, thanks for giving me a job as well last year.
Yeah,
a little spot for me, and it was brilliant working with you and the team at CastleMead. So thanks a lot.
No, Tom, we loved having you. I think one day you're going to have to tell the story about your first lesson. Do you remember your first lesson at CastleMead and what it was about?
No. Oh God.
I'll just say, no, it went really well. We loved having you. Do you remember it was you did a blind date lesson?
Oh jeez, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
It was.
You can tell that another time.
It was there. It had to be done. Just before I go, I just want to thank people who have given me feedback on these interviews. I'm just going to list some names. Phil Naylor's Nat, thanks for your help and feedback. Chris Dyson, Matt Lovegrove, Joe Siricart, Jesse Donner, Sean Wills, Alan Osborne, Zain Azam, and Georgina Young, who've all been very nice in the last week and sent me messages saying we love your school leader interviews. So thank you to all those people. And I will continue with series 2 on Saturday with my next guest. And I will reveal my next guest very soon on Twitter, but it'll be on Saturday morning. Tom, thanks ever so much, and catch you again soon.
Cheers, Tom. Speak soon. Take care.
Cheers.